All right, hi. Thank you so much for joining us once again. My name is Ashley, and welcome to Chainstack's Get Started on Hyperledger Fabric version 2 webinar. Just before we begin, I'd like to give you a brief run through of what's going to be happening today. So first of all, we have Laurent Dedenis. He is the CEO and co-founder of Chainstack, and he'll be giving you a brief introduction of Chainstack and what we do. And then followed by Jona, our lead product manager, who will be basically running through the Fabric specific capabilities of the Chainstack platform. So obviously this is an interactive webinar. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask. You can put your questions on the chat box below. And so we'll be keeping tabs on that, or alternatively, we will have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, Laurent, please.
All right, Ashley, thank you very much. And good morning, good evening, everyone. And a warm welcome to our Hyperledger Fabric 2.0 webinar. That must be the third or fourth webinar we are running in the past 3 months, specifically focused on Hyperledger Fabric. And I'm of course very pleased to welcome a decent group of people from a number of perspectives so that we can make this session as interactive as possible. My name is Laurent Dedenis, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chainstack, as Ashley mentioned. And of course, I'm excited to introduce this service, even though the service was launched about 2.5 months ago during the Hyperledger Forum in Phoenix back in the US, at a time where people could still travel and meet. And of course, you know, the service is still relatively new. You don't have a lot of ways to easily deploy Hyperledger Fabric 2.0 in the way Chainstack has built it. So I hope you find our session interesting and full of useful information for you and for your technical team. Chainstack is a managed blockchain services, and our overall goal is to make it as simple as possible for enterprise and partner to launch and scale decentralized network and application, right? We've built a very comprehensive and intuitive user interface, amazing orchestration tool, and also work with the leading public cloud infrastructure provider so that we can come with the best cost-effective solution and predictable pricing as possible. Chainstack is a 3-year-old company, and we are actually headquartered in Singapore. That's where the team is, together with myself and my co-founder, Eugene. And today we are servicing hundreds of customers, both in pre-production and production. And if you'd like to know more about Chainstack and the other services that we provide, I encourage you to visit chainstack.com, of course. But also read more about what Google said about us, and also Gartner that listed us in its latest blockchain hype cycle report at the end of 2019. I would also like to encourage all of you to spend some time on our website and look at the amazing survey and research report we built in Q4 2019 about the trend in the enterprise blockchain protocol space. And I think we made a fairly unique research that was actually published and republished by multiple media in this space and in the IT space, talking about the trends and adoption of enterprise blockchain protocol within the industry and the enterprises. Now, in short, Chainstack is, sorry, let me get this over. So in short, Chainstack is basically the easiest and most cost-effective way to deploy, manage, and scale your infrastructure. And of course, we are very excited to work with the very large Hyperledger ecosystem and the Hyperledger Fabric 2.0 ecosystem especially. For the past 3 months, we've been amazed by how vibrant and dynamic the ecosystem was, and also very innovative. We had the opportunity to talk to many partners, giving us feedback about the initial version of the product and the enhanced version we're going to show you tonight, but also consortiums and enterprise sharing feedback about what they'd like a blockchain managed service solution on Hyperledger Fabric do and how it should actually look like. I think what we try to do is basically making it as simple and as easy for everyone to join and basically participate and contribute to any given network. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Jona so that he can actually walk you through the platform and what we've built so that you can judge by yourself. And again, we welcome questions and comments at the end of Jona's presentation. Jona, please. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Laurent, for that introduction. And yeah, as Laurent mentioned, I'll be happy to run through a demo of the platform for you now. But just before I jump into that, I'd like to give a few words about what I'll be showing and discuss a little bit some of the changes in Fabric version 2, if you're not aware of them already, as there were some quite significant changes that came out just a few months ago. Yeah, so the main thing I want to focus today is on the topic of chain code management and also application development in Fabric version 2. And these are specifically some of the changes around how chain code is managed was one of the largest changes that we saw in the move from version 1 to 2. And just briefly, what that means is in version 1, we had the peer chain code method that we used to allow anyone to install and instantiate chain code onto a channel. So what this meant is that any participant in a channel could install chain code onto their peer and then instantiate this into the channel. And as long as anyone else had that chain code installed on their peers as well, they can then all participate in that application. What's new in version 2 is the peer lifecycle chain code, as it's called, which is where channel members have to actually approve chain code according to an endorsement policy on the channel before it can be actually approved and committed for use in this environment. So obviously some interesting changes and I think necessary changes that speak to the kind of core concepts and core value that we see in the Fabric ecosystem as a whole and development like ethos as a whole in Fabric as well around the governance and the on-chain governance of all decisions and actions that take part on the network. So that's one thing. And the next is around application development and particularly looking at the Node SDK, which we use to, which we see as a very popular way for building applications on top of Fabric. And I'll demo such an application in just a few moments. But yeah, one thing to point out, and if you spend any time in the Rocket chat for Hyperledger community, you'll see a lot of questions about this as well, which is the fact that the Fabric client component or module was dropped in version 2 of the Node SDK. And what that means is we no longer have a way to interact directly with the peer. We can interact with smart contracts and build applications that interact with these contracts directly, but we have no way to build ways of interacting with this peer, for example, to be able to install, approve, commit, query the chain code that would be installed on a peer. So what I'll show you today, beyond just deploying a Fabric network on Chainstack, which is showing the strength and the simplicity and ease of use that Laurent just discussed, but we'll also show how we can then download the relevant certs and configure our development environment in order to be able to quickly install and upgrade chain code in this network so that we can start testing straight away onto what we just deployed, and also show how we can deploy a web application that will not just use the Node SDK to initiate transactions and show the results, but will actually be able to also query the chain code installed on a channel using a method that I'll explain shortly. So let's jump straight into that. I will talk about this briefly later. Let's show you what Chainstack looks like. So here we are in the Chainstack platform. This is what you would see when you landed on your dashboard. In Chainstack, we distinguish between consortium and public chain projects. As you might imagine, consortium projects are where we can actually deploy and run our own consortiums. We can build our own networks up from scratch We can invite members to come and participate in those networks with us and deploy their own nodes on their own infrastructure so that we have a consortium environment that we can build from the ground up. But we do also support public chains, meaning you can deploy a node onto any public chain such as, or popular public chains such as Ethereum or Bitcoin or so have you. But today we are of course interested in our consortium projects. So we'll take a look at this one that I set up earlier. Here, as I mentioned, we have member control, so we can invite different organizations to come and participate in this project just with their email. And as we grow our list of participants here, they can all come in and start deploying nodes in a shared environment where we can, in this case here, transact on a couple of Hyperledger Fabric networks that I've already set up. Before I explore these networks though, I'll show you how we can create a new one and just how easy it is. So we'll call this one webinar. We will of course be deploying Fabric using a Raft consensus out of the box. We'll be hosting the initial network, the initial node and network services such as a single Raft orderer, and we'll deploy an initial channel and one peer to this network to start. And we'll put all of those components as we are tonight based in Singapore in AWS in Singapore. We also support GCP and Azure. And for some of our larger customers, we help them to deploy on-premise nodes as well into these networks. So network creation itself is very straightforward, and onboarding other participants is also equally straightforward. And this is something that we heard a lot from people at the Hyperledger Global Forum this year, as Laurent mentioned, about the frustrations of growing networks beyond just an initial peer and initial test set of participants, but up to 10, 20, hundreds of nodes. We can very easily manage that and control that all from this dashboard here. So here's one network, sorry, this one that I set up earlier. As you can see, we have 3 different organizations. It's multi-cloud out of the box. So each participant can deploy their nodes in the environment that makes most sense for them. And they're all free to interact in this network. We have an explorer built in as well, so that we can actually explore the transactions and the peers on this network. So as soon as you come in and deploy your own node into this network, you would then also have an explorer deployed included with you in that, so that you could also explore it yourself. But for the purpose of our demonstration today, I'll be using this network here. And what we're building is an income distribution network. And there's a nice simple chain code that one of our developers has built, and we have a tutorial running on our site for how you can run this chain code as well. And the goal of this is basically to have an application where we can distribute funds to a potential group of people, say a city or a country, and all individuals have to do is just sign up and opt into the service on a network, and we will then have some sort of basic income service that we would distribute for them. So what we would need to do to get started here, of course, is we want to be able to connect to our node, connect to one of our peers. So I own this distributor peer here. And what I can do is, what I can see are all the credentials and information that I might need to connect to it and start deploying applications to, or chain codes with this peer. So we have the ability to export our entire MSP. We can see some information about this, details about this network as well, such as the orderer credentials. We can export connection profiles to help application development, and the TLS certificates for the order as well, so that we can communicate with them. And once I have all of this downloaded, I can now go about running my web app. So just, oh, Laurent, I think you're taking control of my screen still. There we go. All right.
Sorry, I was chatting with one of the attendees, and I clicked the wrong button. Sorry, Jona.
That's all right. Yeah, so what I'm going to show you now is an application that was built by, again, some developers in Chainstack who are big fans of Fabric. So if you have any questions specific to how this application is built or how the chain code is run, I encourage you to share them in the chat or to follow up via email afterwards so that we can share your questions with them. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have or to discuss the design of any applications that you'd be thinking of running yourself. So what we've done is created the network. We've downloaded the relevant certs and found the necessary fields that we need to configure our environment. So for example, information about how to connect to our peer, the MSP for this peer, the admin identity so that we can actually create a wallet and use a user to interact with our node. I've already set all of this up in our environment file over here. And as you can see, there's some information relevant to that. And there's a few pointing to some directories on my local machine here where I've stored my MSP and so on and so forth. From then, I've also set up my server here. So I've got the backend running. We've created a wallet and got our gateway open for us to start to access our application. We've built the front end as well. And now we can access our application running locally here. And I'll show you what it does. So we're querying the channels that are available on this network. And what's interesting is we've actually listed out the different chain code that's also being committed to this channel or installed on this peer. And the way that this is done is quite interesting. We've actually integrated, as I mentioned previously, the Fabric client module of the NodeSK has been dropped in v2 of Fabric. We are now instead using the peer CLI to interact with our peer within this application to query the chain code that's been installed and committed, installed on our peer and committed to the network. So as you can see here, I have a few different versions that I've been playing around with, and we'll open the latest one to see how we can now interact with this chain code on a peer, on a node, sorry, that's running in this Chainstack network. We can also take a look at the logs here if we want to inspect what's going on in the peer itself. This is a newly released feature that just came out in Chainstack this week. And we'd also be able to look into the chain code server if we wanted to see what was going on there. So as I mentioned, this application is a way to opt in to a basic freedom dividend program, it's called. And it takes two arguments. One is our SSN, so some generic social identification number. And then the second argument is a description, so some message that we would put in when we opt into this program. So I will opt in as a user or a person. Opt in, and I successfully opt into this program. Now I can query to check that that has actually been committed. And we see that it has. We can also check our node logs and retrieve the latest one, see there's been some activity on our node, and there has indeed. So there's a little bit of a problem though with this chain code in that these arguments are not exactly very user-friendly to anyone who's building an application with it. It doesn't really tell us what we're doing or what we need to enter, which is obviously not a great experience. So I'm going to show you how what we've done is we've also built some nice bash scripts that we use to very quickly test and install chain code. So if we want to make small changes while we're in our development environment here, we can very quickly make some changes to the code, trigger our update, and it will package our chain code, it will install it to our peer, it will prove it on the channel, check the readiness, go through all the steps, commit the chain code to the channel so that we can immediately see our changes and have a very quick development environment for working with Fabric. So if I open VS Code here, what you can see is in this metadata, we have those two arguments that we were looking at previously. And I have a new metadata file here where I've actually entered the SSN ID and description as we would expect. So let's just rename these. And we will trigger our upgrade of our chain code. And now this, of course, is only has been built to work for a single organization network. If we had multiple organizations, multiple parties participating in this, then we would need some more complex commands to be able to, as it's not, we would require more than one participant on the channel to actually approve this chain code before we commit it to the channel. Let's see how long this takes. Hopefully not too long. There are some steps required to build. We're automatically increasing the version number as we do this as well. So as you saw, we were on 1.3. We now have Freedom Dividend 1.4 that's been become available. Let's see if that completed and if we can access it. Yes, we can. So there we go. Just like that, we made a change to our application. We triggered the update on the channel, and now we have beautiful descriptive fields that actually tell us what we're doing. We can still query our previous ID and see that that person is still opted into this chain code. So it's very much the same chain code, but we've just updated our version number on the channel. Great. So that was the demo, and I would like to just take 1 minute to talk a little bit about our roadmap and our commitment to working with Fabric and the Fabric community. So today, as I showed, Chainstack, we're running Fabric 2.1. We were the first managed blockchain services to support Fabric version 2 just weeks after its release, where we announced it in Phoenix. And what that means is you can create a consortium network. These networks support multiple organizations and unlimited nodes running in multi-cloud, multi-region environments, and also on-prem if required. Our nodes are self-healing and auto-scaling. So, if you expect a sudden influx, or rather would not expect a sudden influx of traffic, but it might happen to your node, we handle all of that and monitor our nodes very closely to ensure that they're stable and up and running as much as possible. And we also have and demonstrated the Node Explorer and Log Viewer, which we added since we last demoed in Phoenix in March, I think it was. Looking beyond today, we're looking to add a lot more features around Fabric and deploying Fabric on Chainstack. Namely, the next one coming up on the roadmap will be an API for network and node orchestration, so that you can automate a lot of this orchestration processes yourself, so that rather than having to manually go through our user interface, you can actually build this directly into maybe your CI/CD pipelines, or build your own applications that can quickly deploy infrastructure using the power of Chainstack beneath it. We're also building out an application marketplace very soon. And if you're interested in having your application or service related to Fabric listed on our marketplace, then please do get in touch. It's a great opportunity for partners to be able to distribute their applications to Chainstack customers, and also for the customers to have a way to have pre-built, pre-designed, high-quality applications and services that they can, in just one click, deploy into their networks and deploy into their nodes. We're also looking at building out more advanced ordering systems with multi-order rack clusters, and also very closely watching how we can extend our CA service identity management, with which also comes HSM integration. We're building out custom cloud deployment options, which we already have for our enterprise customers, but looking to integrate this more tightly into the platform itself. And just generally features around more advanced chain code, channel, and network management in the interface to provide a really all-in-one tool for your Fabric application testing, development, growing, and scaling of Fabric networks and applications. So yeah, that's everything. You can get started today at console.chainstack.com. And I also have added a link here to our tutorial that goes through the steps that I just did today, showing how we can build and run this web application, excuse me, using the Node SDK. So maybe Ashley can drop that link in the chat. I'm not sure if you're able to, so that it's easier to access. If not, you can go to chainstack.com and it should be viewable in our blog. And it also shows up in Google quite easily. So I see.
Right,
we
thank
have
you,
a lot
Jona.
of, yeah.
Yeah,
sorry,
we had a lot of questions. Let me take over from here. We had a lot of questions to everyone, and we also had a lot of questions privately sent to myself and to Ashley. Let me try to make some comments on some of the questions that, and some are for you, Jona. Some that I have not answered as they were coming in referral. So the first one is, how do we create credential and eventually MSP for peer or client?
Yeah, so we generate the credentials automatically at the moment. We do work with some of our custom deployments to handle this on a one-off basis for our clients. But I don't know if any of you are interested in working with Corda, you can take a look at some features that we've recently released there, which is around a vault for identity management. And we're looking to extend that to also work for Fabric too. So if that's something that's interesting to you, it is also on our pipeline as we build out more services for managing identities and credentials and certificates in a secure environment.
Right. We had a question regarding how other network or consortium created outside or in Chainstack can actually interoperate with other network. So Chainstack is absolutely hybrid. You can actually interact as long as nodes are being connected, whether they are on-prem, depending on the configuration, or in public cloud or in private cloud. We offer various way of connecting the network together. So absolutely open. One more question, Jona, was regarding inviting participants, right? So how do we automate onboarding of the network participants? So the reason I ask this question is because this question has multiple aspects. One is on getting someone to basically register and become an active member and deploy a node of a consortium. And the second part is really the governance around how this person can join or can potentially exit the consortium. So as far as we're concerned, what we do is we created a very easy onboarding of participants to a network, right? We basically have a process whereby you send email, you receive an invitation, and then you just connect and basically register to the platform and deploy your node. In the case of larger network, we love to think that specific onboarding and maybe custom-made onboarding for the customer and the participant is very key in the way the network can actually grow, and we also provide this service. I think how credentials are created, is it by using identity mixer or create credentials?
Yeah, so yeah, as I mentioned before, we're looking to add more support for more configuration options around the CA itself. Right now, we automatically generate the credentials on a one-off basis, but we're looking to add more customizability for you to have control over the CA and generating those credentials yourself. For pricing, yeah, you can check the pricing page, but we have a number of different tiers, and actually we'll be introducing a new tier soon. So keep a lookout for that as well. To develop targeted at people who are looking to grow past our entry-level developer plan. So the developer plan is free with no monthly cost and a very approachable pricing for metered usage of nodes, since we'll be hosting these nodes ourselves. This is charged hourly, so you can spin up a node, run it for a few hours, and then bring it down again, and that's all you pay for. So it's very much a pay-as-you-go pricing model. As you scale up and we enable more services on our higher tiered plans, we introduce a monthly membership cost, but we still have the same metered component as well. So all of these details are on our pricing page, and you can check out, there's a handy calculator that you can use to estimate what your usage would be depending on your plan, the number of nodes you're running, and the number of time you'd be running these nodes for.
Any plans to support Besu? So Besu is part of the protocol we are, what we say is monitoring as one of the protocols that we think is interesting. In the past 5 months, we added Corda network support, we added Hyperledger Fabric 2.0 support as well. So we add protocol on a regular basis. So there is a question regarding Kaleido versus Chainstack. So what I'd like to say is I encourage everyone on this call to go to console.chainstack.com and try the service we built, right? The service we built is actually extremely user-friendly and intuitive, and that is to serve one very specific portion of the market that we think is important, which is the large networks and consortium that needs to invite and accelerate the onboarding as well as the activation of large number of participants. And we believe that the process we have established for that is extremely practical and easy to use, and as I said, intuitive. I think that's one of our differentiators. I think that the technologies that we use to deploy nodes, as well as the patent that we have around it, and the diversity of not only the protocol that we support, but also the deployment option, make us fairly unique in the process, right? The ability to deploy on-prem as well as in public cloud, but also choose a different public cloud or specific environment. No, Chainstack does not require all consortium members to use Chainstack. Consortium member can use different providers. All right. Great. Thank you, everyone. I think we went over by about 5 minutes. It was great to have so many questions. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. Again, I encourage everyone to go to console.chainstack.com, check the tutorial on the deployment of Hyperledger Fabric 2.0 and the demo that Jona has done. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly at ld@chainstack.com or jona.sc@chainstack.com. Thank you very much. And you guys have a very good evening or a very good day ahead of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.